Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we're super happy to have you here. And if you've been listening and enjoying for a while, I would be super grateful if you would please take a moment to give us a review on Apple Podcasts. It's one of the best and simplest ways to pay it forward and help others find the show so that they too can tap into the powerful perspectives and positive vibrations we are collectively emanating. The other unique and magical way to share this show is by sending any friends you think would benefit from listening to this podcast our Game with the Universe link at positivehead.com/game. Also listed in the show notes, which will serve them up a quote-unquote random episode when they click it. Just instruct them before clicking the link to close their eyes for a moment and sincerely ask the universe to cue up the episode that contains the insight and perspectives that they most need to hear at this point in their life journey, and then click to listen to whatever episode is synchronistically served up to them. I have heard time and time again from people about the incredible results they received playing the game. So just tell your friends magical results are guaranteed or their karma back.
All right, all you positive heads, welcome one and all. Thank you so much for joining me on this magical today. Today, I'm going to address a question from a listener, and this is a very sensitive topic, and I know that many of you have the same concerns. And so I thought it would be a great idea to talk about it and to maybe shed some light from a different perspective. And the question says this: I was listening to your latest episode, and you said we are never alone and to not be afraid. I'm suffering from PTSD and shock watching the Palestinian children killed in airstrikes, about 800 plus children, and was wondering, how does this apply to them? Did they sign up for this suffering? Any insight would be greatly appreciated. Like I said, this is an incredibly sensitive topic, and I want to talk about it from the spirit perspective, from the bird's eye perspective, because of course, when we look at it from our real world 3D, meaning real world, the world we're living in our every single day focus, that's our real world existence, our 3D. When we look at it from this perspective, of course we are angry. Of course we are grief-stricken. These feelings are inevitable if you are a human being that has any sense of compassion and empathy, because no one wants to see another human of any age, let alone a child, suffer in this way. But when these things do occur in and around our experiences, and we have to then look at the emotions that are coming up and welling up within us, we also need to understand then, what are we going to do with these emotions? Because as I said before, of course, we're going to be grief-stricken and angry and shocked and suffering from stress from this. And at the same time, we can allow that to snowball within ourselves, which then magnifies that energy into the reality. We can sit with our grief, we can sit with our anger, we can understand it within ourselves. We can even understand that this anger, this grief, the reason why it's there. When we think about deeply the reason why we feel these feelings, ultimately, it is because we love. Because we love so deeply. We love humanity. We love another. We love another just because they are human. And we want to protect because we love. And when we can't do that, it makes us angry and grief-stricken and causes us stress. But we can do something different. And the different thing that we can do is understand that this all comes from a place of love. That is its seed. And so this thought, this emotion, can be alchemized in this way. To remember this emotion that I'm feeling, this intense emotion, is coming from a place of love. So I'm going to take that seed, this powerful love that I feel, and I am going to send it to the areas that need it the most. I'm going to send this feeling of love that is the seed, the depth of where these emotions are coming from. And I am going to send that out into the world, out to the families who need it most. And that right there is the most beneficial thing that every single one of us can do, if we are able. There is, of course, cycles and processes with these things. But when we are aware and can remind ourselves to make that choice in mental focus, to alchemize that thought, to switch it, to switch that vibration and do something beneficial with it. Because why is all of this happening in the first place? That's a huge question that I'm not sure anyone has a definitive answer to. I certainly do not. Broadly, when I think of when things like this happen in the world, I generally don't understand it. I don't understand this type of capacity in human beings. And I know many of you probably don't either. And so it's confusing. It's frustrating. There's so many emotions that come up with this. And that is normal. And they should come up. And we should feel them and express them. And then we alchemize them. We alchemize them to do something purposeful with them, to help in maybe the only way that we can. And if there is another way where you can help, where you can do something, then do that too. But if there isn't something tangible that you can put your finger on, then this work, this prayer, this energetic intention, this alchemizing that thought within yourself is your contribution to the energetic whole. And the more we put out these energetic contributions of love and empathy and compassion and forgiveness, the more these energies are out there, the more these drops, these ripples go out, the more and more they expand. It is exponential as we do this work. And it is incredibly, incredibly important that we don't allow ourselves to spiral down into a negative pit, therefore dirtying our ripple, not serving in the way we came to, because we came to shine our light, to send that ripple of love out. And so these remembrances within ourselves, to remind ourselves that these feelings come from a place of love, the ultimate seed of love, and to be able to send that vibration out and to focus on that vibration. Because when we are experiencing things like this in the world, adding more anger, more stress on top of the situation does not help. It doesn't help each individual, and it doesn't help the whole.
Before we continue on with today's episode, for those of you interested in getting more fantastic fungi in your life, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about a friend of mine's brand new company, The Great Mother. Recently, I have been drinking The Great Mother's superfood mushroom coffee alternative called Ritual, as well as regularly taking their awesome Ally microdoses, and I am truly loving both. As you probably know, these days, many of the world's highest achievers and performers swear by microdosing. The problem is it can still be difficult to get a hold of magic mushrooms. That's why when my friend reached out, who lives in an area and country where legalization is not a problem like it was in the past, and said he'd be willing to offer microdoses to my listeners, I wanted to pass the word along. Ally microdoses are 100% organic. And in addition to a small amount of the magic active ingredient, they also contain functional mushrooms like lion's mane, cordyceps, chaga, and other brain boosters like bacopa. Ally is essentially a full spectrum nootropic. And of course, the coffee alternative ritual doesn't contain magic mushrooms, but it has an array of the best organic functional mushrooms in the world. And, with functional mushrooms, it's really important to get them from the highest integrity sources. And whereas some other highly popular mushroom coffee alternatives on the market only contain a few varieties of functional mushrooms in their actual ingredients, Ritual has 7. Not only does it contain more types, it also contains 3 to 4 times the amount that the big brands have in each serving, and it tastes amazing. I actually like to have it on its own as well as mixing it into my coffee sometimes as well. However, since this is definitely a unique offering, there are a few steps. First, just reach out and request to follow the private page, thegreat.mother on Instagram. Once you've been accepted to follow, just message what you're interested in getting and someone will get back to you.
Let's talk about this from a spirit perspective, because the original question says, did they sign up for this suffering? And from the soul's perspective, we make contracts for all of these things, these big events that happen in our lives. But I want to back up a little and talk about the suffering piece. Because what happens in traumatic events, death events like this, before the body feels a single ounce of anything, the spirit and soul leave. The soul knows it's time and checks out right before, like an instant before, that trauma actually happens to the body. I know this to be true. Dolores Cannon talks about it a lot in her books, but I know this to be true in my own experiences with being around people as they are transitioning. It is almost as if you can watch this happening. So I hope that that is a comforting thought for all of those who are thinking that those who experienced the bodily trauma and who have transitioned, those individuals did not suffer, not one iota. The people who do suffer are those who are left here, left behind, left suffering the loss of their loved ones. So there's different kinds of suffering that we sign up for. But these children, they did not feel a thing. And so I hope that that is a comforting thought, because the soul knows best. The soul knows how to keep us from being disarranged or distorted or just getting too traumatized in a life to where we need a whole lot of healing work. So let's go back to these soul contracts and the soul's perspective. One of Dolores Cannon's books called, and I'm not sure exactly the name, but I think it is, A Soul Remembers Hiroshima, where a large group of people all left in a traumatic event. And what she found in this book is that this entire group soul, all these souls in this group, this collective of souls, all decided together to have this experience. And the reasons for these experiences can be many. And oftentimes they are in the general overarching themes of to teach a lesson, to learn a lesson, to have an experience. Because unfortunately, on this very dense planet where we have these extreme polarizations that we get to live in and get to learn from, oftentimes what happens in our karmic cycle is that we get stuck here because we're not learning what we're supposed to learn or what we wanted to learn. There's no supposed to, but our soul did have a plan to come in and learn a certain thing. And if these kind of check marks to all the grades haven't been met, then got to come back in and see if we can learn it the next time. And each and every time a lesson is attempted, the next time it is attempted, it gets harder. The third time, even harder. And keep going until it is so incredibly hard that you're now forced to learn this lesson because, well, hopefully forced to learn the lesson Because when you look at what's going on now in the world, in my mind, in my perspective, I hope and pray and believe that this is horrific enough that there will be some who actually learn their lesson this time. Because we all need to learn our lessons as a group collective in order for us all to go to the next level. So we need to have enough of a collective group consensus to all be in the same energy, the same thought, in order for us all to go. And so we have to learn our lessons, and it's going to continue to get harder and harder until we learn them. And so what happens in these group collectives, these soul groups see this. Volunteers who have been here, done that, and are way more far advanced than we are here. They look at us down here and they see all the muck and the confusion and the nonsense, the fighting, all the ridiculousness. They see that and they say, I need to get down there and help. What can I do? What can we do to really wake these kids up down there? What needs to happen in order for them to learn? And so we make these agreements. We agree to come in and maybe, just like this, go as a group. Go as a group to teach the whole who are still here a lesson. Because just maybe this time, and I hope and pray that they will learn, that we will all learn, that this gets us absolutely nowhere. From the soul's perspective, we are trying to do that. We're trying to grow. We're trying to see it in a new light. Each and every soul who comes into an existence, into a human body, has an entry plan and an exit plan. There is not a single soul that does not choose, it's my time. Now, when they go, now is their time. And that is a soul choice. It has nothing to do with this 3D reality, although in our 3D perspective, it sure seems it, doesn't it? But from the soul perspective, there are no death accidents. There are no, oh, whoops, this just happened. The soul decided. Because if it wasn't the time for that soul to go, that soul would have been somewhere else, far away, in a different place. Or if they were in that place, they would have had maybe a near-death experience, a close call. Somehow, they would have been guided and protected because it was not their time. And again, this is a thing that's incredibly difficult to wrap our brains around in this 3D perspective. But when we can take that bird's eye and look at it from the soul's perspective, I find it to be slightly comforting. It helps me understand it more. It helps me make sense of it. And then it helps me know how to work with it here. Because that is what's most important. Why are we having this experience? Why is this experience happening for me? And what am I to learn from it? How is this experience helping my soul's evolution and growth? These are all extremely important questions for introspection, to ask ourselves when things like this are happening. What are we learning? And in what way, in our own individual way, how are we contributing? Because remember, we are a group collective here as a human race on this earth. So every single atrocity that happens on this planet is because as a collective, we are allowing it. That means every single individual one of us here needs to own up to that. Look deep within ourselves and say, where am I allowing this? Because it is happening, that means it is within us. If it wasn't within us, it wouldn't be on the outside. And there isn't any of us that is separate from the whole. That means we all need to own it. And we all need to look inside and see where we can change ourselves to have a different perspective, to find that seed of love, to alchemize these thoughts, to change that thought focus, to have a new perspective so that this seed, this ripple that we send out comes from a place of love. And each and every single one of us that does that then is then being the change that we want to see in the world. We have to, each and every single one of us, do this. And until we do, we will not see the changes in the world that we so greatly need and desire. We will get there with all of us doing the work. So when things like this happen, we take this anger, we take this grief, we take this stress, and we alchemize it. We look inside. Where are these shadow sides within myself? How can I heal this within me so that I can help heal the whole? And the last thing I do want to say on this topic is we do have so much help. We are never, ever, ever alone. Remember, we are multi-dimensional beings that exist in this infinite continuum where time is not a thing. And because we have all of these infinite aspects of ourselves living in all of these other dimensional places, all of those aspects of ourselves are helping ourselves, helping us at all times. So this is what's so beautiful about kind of gaining the vibrational ranks and walking that staircase, I'll call it, to all of these higher vibrational levels, because when you get to that higher self level, your job is then to kind of look back down the steps and help those other versions of yourself before you then go back to Source Creator. So all of these experiences that we have are for this purpose, to walk up that vibrational staircase, to ultimately go back to the oneness that we came from. In order to do that, we got to have all the experiences and learn all of the things. And here on earth, that means the sublime and the horrific. At the end of the day, remember, this lifetime here, each and every human lifetime that we have, is a very, very short portion of time in our soul's continuum. And when we're done here, we get to come back if we want, or have another experience. Regardless, our soul family, those who we love, we get to stay with them for eternity. We never lose anyone. It just feels like we do in this illusion that we call Earth. I think that's going to be it for me today, everyone. I'm going to leave you with this song by Symbolico called Quantum Praying. Until next time, I love you all.